Safety Committee to order at 6:01. Clerk, please call the roll.
Chairman LeBlanc,
Present.
Councilor Harris,
Present.
Councilor Diane LeBlanc,
Present.
Councilor Mackin, Councilor Wacabo. 3 present, 2 absent, we have a quorum, Mr. Chairman.
Wonderful, thank you. Councilor LeBlanc, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes of Monday, March 18th. All those in favor?
Aye. Aye.
All those opposed? The ayes have it. Let's see, now we have new matters. Downtown trash container resolution. Was Councilor LeBlanc on that, or just Councilor Logan? Oh, Councilor Harris.
About the table?
Lay it on the
Oh,
table.
later on the table, sorry.
Yes, were you on that?
Yes.
No. Yes, I was actually.
Okay.
The trash containers, are you sure?
That, yep, downtown trash container resolution.
Yes,
Okay.
the big belly,
Yes,
yes.
so Councilor Harris would like to take that from the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
If you wanted to lay it
All
on the
opposed, the ayes have it.
If you wanted to lay it on the
Oh.
table.
Because we want other councilors to be able to speak on it who are not present. Or
Okay.
others that signed on to that.
So she made a motion to lay that matter back on the table, all those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Okay, now we're on to table matters,
So I move to take the matter regarding the resolution of the administrative consent order from the table.
Councilor LeBlanc would like to take from the table the resolution of administrative consent order update. All those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have
I
it.
move to
Councilor
hear
LeBlanc,
from off-committee members.
she makes a motion to hear from off-committee members, Kazaza, or all off-committee members?
No,
Just
Mr. Steve Kazaza.
Mr. Steve Kazaza.
Thank you.
All those in favor?
Aye.
The ayes have it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Kazaza, for being here. So this resolution was actually written by Councilor Logan and myself to try to get a handle on is the end in sight? At what point are we going to be able to stop charging an I&I fee? To those who come into our city to do business, right? Before, and here, Councilor Logan, Vice President Logan,
How it
welcome.
works.
Well, we're talking
I&I.
about the resolution on the administrative consent order, which you had done, and I was on that as well. And I was just saying to Mr. Kazaza that the idea was to get a handle on, is there an end in sight? When will we be in compliance? And to get a better handle on, where are we? Are we 80% there? Are we 90% there? And we've heard back before, every 5 years you need to give them a report. And you give them a report. But that never translates into, okay, when do we see the end of this? And so I'm looking for clarity around that, a timeline. When will we be done? That's the million-dollar question.
Okay. Well, thank you for your questions and inviting me to talk about that. The answer is the Mass DEP lifting the consent decree from the city. The city is in compliance. We are reporting to them semi-annually our progress. We do have an implementation plan, which I copied for you, and you can see that we are 80% through it. The projects that we do are, let me say, tailored to the city's needs in that if we were to do multiple projects on the sewer system all at once, I don't know if you recall 2010 we had gridlock. And that's because of the other projects, that not just sewer projects that go on in the city.
Did you say in 2010 we had gridlock?
Yes.
We had good luck last week. Go ahead.
But it was due to a multiple effort to be aggressive and attack this thing. And as much as I wanna do that, I've seen what happens. And I have a project right now, but I don't wanna embellish or talk about. The answer is, what is the deadline, what is the time frame? And
That's the question.
that's the question. The answer is, it's up to the DEP. We asked the DEP, and at the end of the 5 years, they said, continue doing what you're doing. You are satisfying us, but you still have SSOs, you still have work to do on fog. The city still needs to report to us. Continue doing what you're doing. We have done that. And we continue to hold the sewer rates kind of stable as a result of the II efforts. We're flushing the II sewer bank for city projects such as high schools and fire stations and the needs in the city. But our sewer system continues to back up. Why does it back up with all the work that we've invested in? Because the system is old. There's 137 miles of pipe in Waltham within our 13.6 square miles. And it was built over the course of 80, 90 years. So we'd have to do every single neighborhood to assure no overflows. And what we've done is we've measured the neighborhoods that are the most susceptible and where the worst problems are. And we have done those neighborhoods, with the exception of the last 3 remaining neighborhoods on our plan.
And that's where the best cooks are, right?
That's where the II is. For whatever, and one thing I'd like to point out for the committee that I think has to be stressed is, we can do all the II in the world, but if we don't get the inflow, which is the sump pumps, which have been able to convince the mayor that we need to do that and continue doing that, and she's agreed. So in other words, the Doty Street that I was asked about at Forest Street, we went out there and there was a blockage. We relieved the blockage. I'm happy to report that the pipe is clear. But at the same time, the pipe was also flowing with clear water. So we need to do that neighborhood as well. That clear water isn't sewage. That's
All right, well, so, you know what, so thank you. All of that is good information. A few questions. What does the communication with DEP look like? We send in our 5-year report. We transmit it electronically?
Yes.
Okay. Did they respond electronically? Or do they pick up the phone, or do you sit down and meet? What do you do?
What I've done is I've sent it in consistently every 6 months. I did meet with them a few years ago now and went over the reports. They give me verbal feedback from the meetings. I only hear from them, I'll be perfectly honest with you, unless there's a problem.
So, knowing that we're 80% complete, and I'm not really clear on that means, what that means. I mean, 80% is 80%, I'm clear on that, but when they come back and they say, you know what, you're doing a good job, you're doing everything you should be doing, are we now in the same category as most other cities? Are we yet in a position to, quite honestly, stop charging businesses, many of them small businesses, who want to come to Waltham, right? Are we in a position to stop charging them an I&I fee? One of the things we hear from the small businesses, especially in the downtown, that fee can be a killer.
we're not in a position, Counselor, to stop doing II mitigation for one. The DEP doesn't care how we do it or what we charge, they just want us to do it. So I follow the ordinance, which prescribes how to do it. And one of the things that the II committee did that resounded throughout was allowing developers to pay instead of do projects and covenants. And I can tell you that has been a success with the developers. They would rather not be held up with a covenant with the city. They would rather make their donation, I'm sorry, pay their fee, pay their fair share, and move on.
And that was one of the cornerstones, right? I mean, that's what we heard loud and clear from
Correct.
them. And it made no sense not to do that. The city is still getting the same amount of money. The city is actually getting greater control on where that money goes and what project it goes towards. But since that has occurred, are we making as much progress where we're doing the work ourselves?
We are, yes, we are making progress, and yes, we are using that money, and yes, it's more of a, control for me, yes.
So when this all started, and again, it was certainly before my time, I think the vice president, I was probably the only one on the council when this all started, the city was in a very bad way with regard to this issue. It sounds like we're in reasonably good shape now. And I'm curious, and not that I would expect you to know the detail of where other communities were, but I am curious, if other communities in a like or similar situation with X amount of work to be done, are they charging their businesses, especially their small businesses who are coming into their city? Are they charging them these kinds of fees? Do you know that?
I don't know that. I know that some of the communities such as Burlington have to remove 11 timber. I know that for a fact. I know Weymouth was in the same boat as Waltham. What they charge businesses, and I don't know. I'd have
So
to-
I want to speak to the fog ordinance, right? Because one of the things that came out of the I&I report was that the city needed a fog ordinance. And certainly in fairness to you and to the mayor, you all had brought that forward. After the work of the I&I committee, the Ordinances and Rules Committee, and I was a member of it at the time, there was work done on that to incorporate the recommendations and to rework the ordinance. And quite honestly, that was sent out of the Ordinances and Rules Committee over to the Law Department a long time ago. Now recently, we've expended effort to follow up on stuff that's in the Law Department and see exactly where it is. And so I'm not sure where the disconnect was. They've had it for a very long time. They have now since come back to the Ordinances and Rules Committee. I believe they made their comments, and I know that the Vice President has done some work on that. So hopefully, to respond to what the Law Department had said, and you may recall that you were provided with a courtesy copy of that at one time, because I provided it to you, right?
Yeah.
And I said, what do you think about this? Now, we never did hear back, because I don't know that, you felt comfortable, commenting at that point, but, I mean, hopefully, the product that is going to come out will be a product that, that works for you.
Yeah,
But,
no, I'm absolutely in favor of what's been done in the fog ordinance. We have a new fog inspector that started in the middle of training. And it would be it would be a good thing to have that on the books and be able to use that to, and I wanted to express some of the, feelings that people weren't aware of it and we weren't communicating, and so I did make an effort. I did get it on our website. We do mailings with the water and sewer bills, and it is important to communicate with small businesses what the reasons and what you can flush and why we do this. So I did listen to that. But as soon as that ordinance comes in, I think we can react to that, we can work with that.
And there needs to be, like with any new ordinance, there needs to be real education around it, right? I remember the chairman, after the fog report came out, every chance he got, he was saying, okay, so what are you doing with your fats after you're done cooking? Do you have a little can to pour them in and that kind of thing? So the 20% of the work that remains, is it dispersed across the city? Is it all in one area? How do we clean up that 20% as quickly as possible without causing gridlock?
So the remaining projects, and this is on the implementation schedule that I provided copies of, and I did post for you the latest DEP report on the website, which is the full blow-by-blow, where we are, what we're doing, how many SSOs. That's been public, it's on the website.
Excuse me, one moment. Step into the other meeting, and maybe have Councilor Mackin take the chair.
Oh, absolutely. Do I need to be called for attendance?
Councilor Mackin.
Present.
Mackin's present.
You wanna sit next to me, I wanna do it from there.
How long are you gonna be?
10 minutes.
Oh, I'll stay here.
So, and that was, you recently posted that?
Just recently.
Recently in response to our request?
Yes.
So that was a good point of information. We need some transparency around this issue, because some of us are being asked, right? Is this ever gonna go away, or is the city just going to use this as one more way to take money from people, right? So I appreciate you putting that out there for people to see. So with regard to the 20% and a timeline for getting to 100%, a year, 2 years?
So let me refer to the schedule which the DEP has. If you allow me to go to the third page. So this is where we are currently. The, do you need another copy?
It's okay, if you have it, we'll take
If you
it.
have a spare,
I got another one here.
oh, okay, great.
Thank you. Thank you, Karen. There you go.
Thank
You're
you.
welcome.
So by way of explanation, the third page, the West End Bear Hill Valley project. That project is starting in May, but it's been put into two pieces. We're doing the West End first, and then we will do the Bear Hill Valley. Again, with respect to congestion and other water projects we're doing, and other departments' projects. So that right there is a year worth of projects for area 1314B. Then we have the Piety Corner in the Lanes. And that project is another year after the Bear Hill Valley and the West End is done. Then we have the Met State. And you can see the Met State Council is 100,000 lineal feet. When I bid those projects, that's when I have too much work going on at once. So I try to do, that'll
Sorry,
be,
what was the one you said?
the Met State one, it says Glen Meadow East and Doty Estates. And I would say to you in good faith that I would probably do Glen Meadow East first, and then Doty Estates second, only to the extent of the amount of work going on in a particular area and traffic not being able to move.
So if I might interject, because you've just described three very different areas of the city, can we not be working in all three of them to some extent at the same time?
That hasn't worked in the past.
Okay.
When I do my water projects, or if I do, I'm not the only one doing work in the city. We've got other utilities that wanna get in our streets. We've got public works projects going on, traffic projects going on, so I have to be respectful of that. But what I try to do is focus on design and bidding over the off-season, and then get these projects out the door in the spring, so that we are doing something
So
to,
based upon this, the end is in sight, it's 3 years out?
3 or 4 years out. Like I said, the last one, I wanna caution that the 100,000 is a lot for a neighborhood to have all that work done.
So in terms of this work, right, because we are ripping up the roads, what's the level of coordination with the utilities, with National Grid, with those folks, and with our own Consolidated Public Works Division?
So, with regard to National Grid, they are going into these neighborhoods ahead of us. They went into Cedarwood, they turned that into a tough neighborhood to get around. They went into Boynton, Cabot, the West End, they dug that all up and made a mess.
Do they have work planned in these areas?
They get in ahead of the city work if their pipes are a certain age, Counselor. If they're cast iron, for example, they'll go in and put all new coated steel. And they'll dig up the neighborhood and get out of the way, and then,
Are we expecting that with regard to the areas that you've just described?
I would say so, yes.
So that coordination will take place so that they do their work and it's timed properly with your work, and we're not going in, doing work, repaving, and then having it torn up and having to repave again?
Correct. The only thing I would say is they got into West End a little early. Cabot, Boynton, they've been in there for, I think it was 2 years ago. And they got ahead of me. And so the neighbors suffered with the disruption, they suffered. And so I need to do a better job telling them and predicting when I'm actually gonna have the money in hand and a contractor on the street.
And that coordination, I mean, it's critical.
Right.
It really is,
Right.
because this work is disruptive.
Yeah, well, definitely. So I'm sensitive to that, believe me. I'm use that as a example of how to better plan our projects. And then the other thing is I coordinate with our public works on the paving. And I've been asked to resurface these streets once I leave them, so that's another level of activity that goes along with these projects.
Okay, all right, thank you, those are my questions. Anybody else?
Do you mind if I ask 2 questions real quick? That big format paper, did that come in the packet?
No, I handed it out.
Oh, can I get a
apologize.
copy, please?
Yes.
Thank you. Now, the council for more than 8 for your forbearance.
Thank you, Madam Chairperson, through you to Mr. Casaza. So, the 3 neighborhoods that you referenced before the end is in sight, and I do appreciate the council at large questions, were the 3 neighborhoods that you just referenced on this timeline. So, not because I represent the south side, but I can tell you, I don't see any south side projects here on this multi-year, multi-phase plan. Can you tell me why that is and what the plan is for the south side?
So, the south side is an old neighborhood. However, when you measure the amount of II in the south side versus these other neighborhoods, it's not a priority.
Okay.
That's the only way I can say it, is DEP has given us guidelines on how to measure the actual II with flow metering and calculating based on manhole inspections, smoke testing, and CCTV, what physically has to be done to the system. Ideally, I'd like to do the south side over with new water mains and fix the sewers at the same time. But in terms of a consent decree, I have to go by steps. Again, it's a matter of, is that something that should be done? Yes. Is it something that should be done right now? Well, right now, I'm focusing on this.
Yes. So, just to follow up on that, then, what you're saying is the measurements that you're driving this off of from the DEP guidelines are really what drives your prioritization in this multi-year, multi-phase plan.
That's correct.
And right now, those are those neighborhoods that you've already completed and the 3 that you referenced here.
Correct.
So, just for communication, and because Southside residents may or may not understand this, this looks like it's anywhere from 3 years out, possibly 4 years out, before the south side becomes a priority. If you take these things serially, meaning you will finish the consent decree first as a priority and then do any infrastructure work. And is that kind of the game plan, that we're really 3 or 4 years out?
Absolutely is to, and again, concurrent with what you see here is the sump pump amnesty program. The IDDE program, which EPA is very interested in the city continuing, and then certainly the neighborhoods that are experiencing problems. And by the way, we do maintenance, to keep ahead of those. So
we're not on the maintenance schedule, and we're certainly not out of getting things addressed, like on Lowell. We've got some crushed drainage there, you're addressing that, so it's not like the south side isn't a priority, it will be dealt with on an emergency basis, but this is your multi-year,
this is the priority plan, so to speak.
Okay, so I'm just curious, you mentioned the sump pump program, and on that sump pump program, how is the south side doing with compliance and bringing people kind of into the fold? Has there been any analysis on the south side, or any adoption of the new city practices, or the sump pump program?
I would have to check council.
Okay.
We did survey the entire city, gave every single resident an opportunity to participate. And those that participated are on a list to be fixed. That list is gonna go out shortly. The mayor asked that I put the list into neighborhoods
Yes.
and do, show her north, south, east, and west where these are, and
Yep.
coordinate it with other projects, so that's the phase I'm in right now.
Could I ask that neighborhood list be shared with the ward councilors and the councilors at large, so that we know what's happening in our neighborhoods? Because as we have neighborhood meetings or anything else, we can just kind of help carry the communication
Absolutely.
forward. And
Absolutely.
we're all working together on
Yeah.
that, so I don't get flat-footed in front of someone on a sump pump. He or she may be on the
Right,
list, and
right.
I would just simply be able to produce that list.
Yeah, once
Okay.
it's finalized, I'll send it to the city clerk and the assistant city clerk.
Can I ask timing on the sump pump program? I know we're a little bit off topic, but I think it's important just because we brought it up here, just to say, I only have one other follow-up question.
I'm ready to bid, subject to this list. All the specs, all the areas have been identified. I just have to make sure I satisfy the request to list them by neighborhood.
Okay, and is that a 12 or 24-month or 36-month program? What do you think?
That program is gonna take, right now, I know of 150 sump pumps.
Okay,
And once they're grouped,
okay,
it's gonna be multi-year.
okay. Thank you very much. Back to something that the councilor at large brought forward. I want to go back to this. Definitely in Ward 9 and Ward 8, right? I have the Ward 9 councilor sitting here to my left, and if he wants to be recognized, we'll certainly take him as an off-committee member. But I do want to say that we have quite a few empty storefronts on Louis Street. We're trying to come up with innovative ways to generate business down there and do more downtown revitalization. And I like the question that was asked. What is the tipping point or ceiling that we have to hit or condition that we have to hit to not charge a small business these additional fees? What has to happen? I know you're trying to do the, this initiative, and I totally get it and support it, but it would be great if we understood what it could take to not end up charging these small businesses behind that.
So, again,
I'm just curious your thoughts.
I think, I understand the small business, and I think the council made it very clear about single-family homes they could buy, for a certain fee, and that would work. So really and truly, it's not under my control
Okay.
to change the ordinance for small businesses.
Right.
It's my role to make sure they comply with the ordinance.
Right, so let me ask, said differently, what would we have to hit from a ways and means, a metrics, a status in our sewer system for outputs or inputs where we wouldn't have to charge? And is that achievable? I mean, is there a way to measure this that we could someday look at this? Or is it really too far flung to even look at?
It's not too far flung.
Okay,
I think it does need to be measured. I don't have an answer for you tonight.
could I ask you maybe to reflect on that? I know budgets are coming up, but maybe you could come back to us in a future meeting. We'll just make this request that you look at this and report back. Even an email is fine back to the clerk that can be disseminated out, just so that we understand where this is. As we work the ordinance and look at this, it'd be important information and we want to be able to support it. I have no further questions. Thank you for your work on this and thanks for answering my questions.
Councilor Logan, do you wish to be recognized?
No, I think the Ward 8 councilor covered it all.
Then I will
Thank you.
recognize not the current chair. I'm with Trumbull Blunt.
Thank you, and I don't know if I missed some of this questioning.
You did?
You did. An interesting dialogue.
On the I&I committee, when we put it together, we had done, as we made it so that you could pay to play, meaning the developers, because we found that the covenants on the property, and then if they had a dry season, they couldn't get their loan or the CO. We also had and it was to help businesses and small businesses on Moody Street, or one of a restaurant, or someone that went to expand, and we wanted to promote water conservation. So I believe in there, you can speak on this, we put down where if you're going to do an expansion which is going to increase the I&I, you can then in turn, if you had dishwashers, because everything's by Title V, which was back in the 80s, so the consumption, so if you're putting in dishwashers, the new stuff gets calculated at the actual rate, but the older stuff was Title V. But if you could get it, so you could replace if you expand in a kitchen, you could replace your dishwasher with energy efficient models, and you could deduct that from the fee you were gonna have to pay, because it's the total increase of the property. And is that something that's being used or not?
What's being used right now, Counselor, is Title V. The energy conservation came up. There was a submittal relative to that. I did some research into that, and the project specifically was Cooper Street. They had asked, by putting in conservation shower heads, to cut the II down in their contribution. And I checked on a few of those developments in other communities. And what I found was, they put them in, people take them out, and they're not always working as described. So I didn't feel like it was in the city's best interest to swallow that. And I held them to Title V for that reason. But I think what is happening more right now is that some of the businesses are asking for consideration where there isn't a Title V category. how would you deal with that? And what I've been doing is working with applicants to measure other businesses of the same type, maybe not necessarily, like a guy called me about a massage parlor. And he turns out he's gonna have one table. Well, try to think of something equivalent, and it turns out maybe a dentist, and that would even be more probably used than a massage parlor. But it could be construed that would work. They would be able to get their permit that way. So in answering your question directly, I think yes, the pay-as-you, that has helped developers and taken some of that studying and all the engineering off their plate. So that's worked well. The conservation, as I said, on a major development.
If I may just add to that, where I was going, where the spirit of the ordinance was heading, so wasn't for the major developers, we hadn't thought of that, it was more so, I'll give you an example, you're Soleil Restaurant, you're this size, and now you're going to double your space, and this space was vacant for a period of time, so the INI went away on that, and so you had to pay on your, even if that space was, because it's 5 years now, so let's say that space was gonna stay and it was a shoe store, but now you're gonna make it a restaurant, so you have to pay on the increase of the water for the entire space, that's your INI fee, correct?
You'd be able to, oh, you said the shoe store was gone for 5 years?
Even if it wasn't, let's say it was a shoe store, so they had one toilet and no dishwashers and no anything, so you're gonna be making that a restaurant or a laundromat, whatever it is, so your increase is going to be large. But in order to promote water conservation, what was in there was, in your existing store, because now it's gonna be the combination of the two stores, that will be the increase, correct? Because it's your address, so
exactly.
you can change, if you got 3-gallon flushes, you change them all to 1.6s, you have a dishwasher that's an 8-gallon per cycle, you go to a 4-gallon, because they're half, and then your laundry, same thing. That gets deducted, that was the spirit of it, that gets deducted off so that it promotes the business to get state-of-the-art equipment, have water savings, but then they end up getting the savings at all, and if it's calculated 4-to-1 removal, it's calculated on their increase of what, when they're going to do it at the time they could do that. That was the spirit of it, I don't know if that translated over properly.
So what we do is we try first and foremost to give them credit for whatever was there, so that comes off the increase. So even a shoe store has some flow, they take that off. Then as far as the energy conservation you're talking about, I have not seen many, or if any, other than the developers looking for it. But certainly I consider that.
It would have to be certified by a professional
Yeah.
to state that these are,
Right.
you know,
Yeah,
the new manufacturer's recommendations. All right, I think that's all I had for, oh, one more question, sorry, is, now, in the SSOs, when we had done some work on this, we found out that some of it was either lack of maintenance or lack of maintenance in areas, and it could be because it's a restaurant area that produces a lot of grease or whatever, but is there, and we looked at some, I think one of the maintenance programs was CMOM, there's a couple of different programs. How is the maintenance much better now than it was in prior years, or you follow a program?
the maintenance is improving all the time. We have a jetting program. We have outlets that we're controlling, we go out, we do our runs and flushing, and it's improving all the time. There's work to be done. As far as the CMOM program, I was in communication with my boss, and I am gonna seek to do something of that nature.
Excellent.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair, could I ask you to recess your meeting for 1 minute, so we just have one quick question, you can come right back, I'm recessed
No
here.
problem. I have no further questions, thank you very much.
Ask,
So I'm currently the chair, so I think we can keep going.
Yes.
Yeah, all right, recognize the other counselor with one.
Thank you. Mr. Kazaza, so to follow up on the conversation with the chairman and the spirit of sort of the energy conservation piece of this, and you indicated that since that was put in place, the only entity to come forward was one of the larger developments. And I'm just sort of thinking about that and wondering, because, you know, first off, if you're opening one of these new restaurants, you're probably going to be bringing in the right kind of equipment, the energy, you know, efficient equipment. And so have you looked at the equipment that they have to see would they qualify for that credit, if you will? So unless they've come to you and asked for it, it sounds like we haven't considered it.
Well, let me try to explain what they asked for. They asked for the INI, and they have their engineers look at the ordinance,
Okay.
and they look at Title V, and let's say they have 24 seats, just for example. So it's 35 gallons per seat. They're not applying for X amount of fixtures. It's not a function
Right,
of
no, I see.
how many toilets or how many sinks, it's how many seats. So, in the spirit of
Right,
working with these
Right.
people,
right.
I don't know what I could do as the reviewer for the city to say, well, how many sinks or how many toilets or all that, because what we've always done, and maybe this is something that has to break through, is go by the Title V in the number of seats.
Well, and again, the spirit of the ordinance is that there is the opportunity to apply an energy conservation credit. And I guess one would either need to know to ask about that, or we as a city would need to be more proactive and have a conversation around that as they come in to do their filings, to say, hey, did you look at that? Is it possible that you would benefit from that?
Yeah, and I can raise that question, I can look at that.
I think that, you know, just to help to raise
Yeah,
the awareness.
yeah, sure.
Because again, I would hate to think that especially a small business might be entitled to the energy credit and not getting it.
I'll work on that.
That's it, that's all I have.
Anybody else?
Thank you,
All
Mr.
right.
Kazaza, for coming in. I moved away the matter back on the table.
I actually had 2 questions. I wanted to check with the other committee members. So on the motion to table, all those in favor, unless you wish to withdraw.
Yeah, I'll withdraw.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Ask questions from the chair.
They will be quite short. So the first is Bear Hill gonna get paved this summer? It looked like it was on the sheet.
So, the gas company's up there, the paving schedule is not under my control. I hope so. I mean,
Okay,
it's not my call.
okay, fair enough. And then the second is, some of the West End streets that are getting paved this summer, is there some kind of notice that goes out to neighbors when that is expected to start, or does it get promoted on social media?
We will do both. We will do a
Great.
door-to-door notice, and we will put it on the website.
Okay, thank you.
You are
Fine.
welcome.
Yes.
So, just to follow up on the chair's question about notice, do they get advance notice? So if by chance they wanted to do some utility work, you know, if the ground is being dug up anyway, or do they get notice the week before?
No, we put it out well in advance, a month in advance of the contractor coming out.
With all due respect, a month in advance isn't necessarily enough lead time for somebody, for a homeowner to work with a utility, to actually make a project happen. Especially when I'm looking at this, and we now know work that's gonna be done 3 years out, right? So if we could communicate that and give neighbors especially more lead time, I mean, they may wish to coordinate their projects, just a thought.
Okay.
Now I move to lay the matter back on the table.
All those in
Thank
favor?
you.
Aye.
Yes.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Thank you for your questions.
Thank you for coming in.
Again, I really appreciate it.
So we'll move to take the composting resolution, oh, not the composting, oh, downtown trash container resolution.
Ah, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Move to recognize,
Yes.
yep, there
So, Councilor Logan, I'm the chair, I can use names.
So
Thank you.
obviously, I mean, the intent's pretty straightforward. I think everybody probably knows what those big belly solar compactors are. There's some around the city, and as I said last week, what happened is we had bought some for the downtown using block grant funds, and then HUD came in and said, oh, you know, because of changes in the average median, you know, in the median income, sorry, area median income for that downtown neighborhood doesn't qualify for you know, the use of the funds for that purpose. And so they were kind of dispersed throughout the city of the areas that did qualify to satisfy HUD. But when they were there, they worked great because they're solar powered. Because they're compacting, they can hold 5 times as much, which means that they have to be emptied less often. And if you look at the trash receptacles that are out there, they're kind of like a cage that holds a plastic bucket. And it opens and there's a little latch, and a lot of the latches are broken because they get slammed when they get picked up, and so the doors are open. The opening's too big, and so people shove their household trash in. The wind blows through. You know, if it gets overfilled, the wind just blows it all over the place, and there's trash all over downtown. So, you know, this would help address the rat problem. It would help address the litter problem in the downtown. It'd be more efficient because it would only have to be picked up 5 times as often. It holds 5 times as much, so theoretically only have to be picked up 1/5 as often. And what I added that we didn't have the last time was the recycling units. They have like a companion recycling units, and right now, if you're walking around, and even if you're very conscientious and always make sure that you throw your litter in a litter receptacle instead of on the ground, if you're walking along and you have something that's recyclable, you have a choice of either carrying it with you until you get home, or throwing the recyclable material into the trash, which it would seem the city, more than anyone, should be doing their part to encourage recycling. So I think this would be really good. Councilor Nebulime had expressed some concern about where these would get placed, and could they potentially, because obviously you've already got the tree pits with the raised, which are a problem, as she pointed out, and you know, you've got some benches and things. So, you know, maybe we could, somebody could amend it here, or I could amend it when it gets out to the floor of the council. Be it resolved to say that, you know, any of these that get deployed should be deployed so as not to create any conflicts with the Americans with Disabilities Act. And that's, if somebody can move that here, or if not, if you want to send it out to the council, I can always put together some specific word and I'll offer that.
Okay. Councilor LeBlanc raised his hand first, so I'm gonna recognize him.
Thank you very much. The ones, the prior program they did, if you know, through the chair to Upland Number Logan, were they done by block grant funds?
Yes, yeah, they were purchased with community development block grant funds, but then HUD, the federal Department of Housing and Urban Development, that administers the federal block grant program, they audit things, they audit the grants, and they came in and said, you can't put those in that location because the median income has gone up. A lot of people don't realize the median income on the south side is going up. That it no longer qualified for the community development block grant target area. And so they said, we said, well, what can we do? And they said, you can keep the units, but you're gonna have to move them to other places in the city that do qualify. And so that's what was done, and the old trash barrels were put back into place.
And I don't know the possibilities of this, but I think it's a great idea, especially on emptying them 1/5 of the time. Is this something that is in, or can we do it in our parks? We have all brand new parks and wanna keep them clean. Is it something we can do at Prospect Hill? And is it something that CPC funds could do, or are we willing to investigate this?
I would think in the parks, you could use CPC funds. I mean, I wouldn't bet my life on it, but it seems to me that like Prospect Hill, where, especially where it would be helping to keep the park clean, that you could use CPC funds. You couldn't use you obviously couldn't use CPC funds downtown, and that's why I'm requesting that, regular city funds be used. But, sounds like you got the makings of another great resolution.
Okay, thank you very much. That's all I have for questions.
All right, Councilor Dan.
Thank you. So my question was going to be with regard to them being ADA compliant when they're placed. So what does the be it resolved say now?
Be it resolved that the Waltham City Council hereby urges Her Honor the Mayor to consider including funding in the FY 2020 city budget to replace all of the litter receptacles in the downtown with big belly multi-stream smart waste and recycling stations to combine high-capacity solar-powered compacting trash bin with a single stream recycling station.
And you could just say,
So-
provided that any such units, put in place shall be situated so as not to violate the Americans with Disabilities Act.
I'm gonna move that change.
All those in favor?
Aye.
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 So I'm going to move approval of the resolution.
On the motion, I have one question. Have we looked into any alternatives to the big belly ones? That's my first question, because I know there's others available that may have a smaller profile.
No, it's just, those were the ones that we do have in the city. And I know that there's a system, and I don't know if we're utilizing it, but that it can send like a radio signal to a central location. And I figured since we've already got some of those units, I don't know if the other ones would be compatible. Yeah, I don't have stock in Big Belly, so I don't, that's just the one that I'm familiar with. Everywhere I've ever seen them, they've been the Big Belly. I've never seen, when I did look a little bit online, and I did see, I think, one other unit, but I've never seen them actually in place working. So we do have some experience with the Big Belly. We have some units already in place.
Okay, cool, thanks. I would also like to know, I was reading about these big bellies, and the handles, honestly, the handles and the little trap buckets get kind of gross. And so I read that there are ones available with a foot pedal on it. Is there any preference in the resolution as to which kind we're getting? Okay.
The only thing I would say about foot pedal though, that just popped in my mind, is in the wintertime, the foot pedal might be
get a
buried in
little
the
sticky
snow.
and- Yep. Okay, I'm happy to approve it as it currently stands, but I wanted to raise that point. So, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Yeah. It is 5 of 7. Councilor Randy LeBlanc.
I'd like to take from the table dated 9/25/2017, sewer backups in Eastview Park resolution.
All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
We just heard from Mr. Kazaza, that is the sewer backup that was happening at Doty and Forest Street, that they had a blockage and they cleared it. So I would like to make a motion to file this.
All on the motion. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Is that-
Move to adjourn.
I'd like to lay that matter back on the table.
We just filed.
We just filed.
Oh, okay, yeah. Got me there.
On the motion to adjourn, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.